welcome back to my channel. As promised, in this video it's going to be a bit different to my normal topic because I want to talk to you today about invasive plants, a little bit about invasive plants and a little bit about poisonous plants, because I just got very interested in it and I just wanted to talk about it basically. So here goes really. So number one on my list in terms of invasive plants is Japanese knotweed, which you're probably aware of because it's up there as one of the top most invasive plants. Now, Japanese knotweed is found mainly in urban areas, on wasteland, on railway tracks, and any kind of disused land, really. It's a tall perennial, so it comes back every year, and it has bamboo-like stems, and it forms very dense thickets. Now, Japanese knotweed was introduced to the UK in the early 19th century as an ornamental plant. So it was actually introduced, and in fact most of the invasive plants were actually introduced, most of them were introduced from elsewhere as ornamental plants originally, and they got out of control. It is now very, very common though, because it spreads, and it's a real nuisance. Now, Japanese knotweed spreads solely by vegetative means, so either fragments of the rhizome or the stem. It does not produce seeds in the UK. Does not produce seeds in the UK, so it spreads solely by vegetative means. And it outcompetes native flora. It has purple speckled stems. It's funny because a lot of these problematic plants have purple speckled stems. Not all of them, but it's just something I've noticed. I think that's just a coincidence. It has the ability to grow from tiny fragments that are smaller than a 1p piece, so it cannot be cut or manually removed. It has a very thick bamboo-like stem, which is mainly green, but it has purple speckles. It has very, very dense leaves that are shaped like spades, and they grow from zigzag stems which are fully purple. In the summer, Japanese knotweed produces large masses of creamy white flowers, which can actually look quite attractive. So you can see why the botanists in the early 19th century liked the plant. Now, as I said, it spreads solely by vegetative means, by rhizomes or fragments of rhizome or stem. Now, rhizomes are underground plant stems that are able to produce roots and shoots from their nodes, and that's how they're able to spread so prolifically across a wide area. Spreads thick and fast along waterway banks, and that could be a problem as well, as I say, because it outcompetes native plants, and it can also have a problem. It can also cause soil erosion problems, because it outcompetes all the native plants, So then, when it dies back in the winter, there's no other plants. There's no plants left to hold the soil in place, so that can cause soil erosion and it can increase the chance of flooding, things like that as well. Yeah, it was very, very popular at one time, and it was actually even taken to the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew. Now, it's not an offence to have Japanese knotweed in the garden, but it is against the law to allow it to spread, and without input, it will spread rapidly. So, it's not against the law for someone to have it in their garden, but they could potentially break the law, put themselves at risk of breaking the law if this thing spreads. So, if it's ever found in your garden, you need to take measures to get rid of it or control it, because you could potentially put yourself at risk of breaking the law, because it will spread. It will spread basically unless measures are taken to control it. It's a 7-foot tall stems, heart or spade shaped leaves. And since 2013, home sellers are required to state whether it's present on the property. One of the big issues with Japanese knotweed, by the way, is that it can cause structural damage. That's probably actually a bigger concern than the biodiversity risks, is the economic problem associated with this plant. The fact that it can grow through foundations. It's very aggressive. But as I mentioned earlier, as only the female plant was introduced to the UK, most can't spread by seeds. They spread solely by vegetative means in this country. Now, new shoots of Japanese knotweed start to appear around late March to mid-April. The young shoots are bright red, pink or purple, and they turn green as they grow. They look a little bit like asparagus at this stage, with a pointed tip which is as thick as your thumb. It has red and cream joints or nodes on stem, with a leaf growing from each node. The leaves on young shoots look like arrowheads with rolled up edges, a bit like a scroll, and it can grow to more than 6 feet very quickly. The stem is smooth, not hairy, and as the stem ages, red speckles develop. It has very thick stems. It has green stems, and they are easy to cut. It's not woody or tree-like, and the stems are hollow inside. The mature leaves are about the same size as your hand by the summer, and they're shield or spade-shaped leaves, and it can easily get to 10 feet high by late summer. But the flowers, as I've already said, are rather lovely. They're sweetly scented and the bees love them. By late summer, it will have flowers, tiny flowers, tiny cream-coloured flowers, and they grow in clusters, and the leaves will turn bright yellow in the winter and they will fall to the ground, and then the hollow stems are left standing. So all that will be left in the winter are the tube-like stems, which turn brown, dry and brittle. The old stems remain standing in a dense crowd throughout the winter. And it grows in very dense thickets due to these underground rhizomes. It's not the only type of knotweed that can be invasive, as other types of knotweed can also be invasive, for example the giant knotweed and the Bohemian knotweed, and they often hybridise with Japanese knotweed. And bamboo is a look-alike, so that could potentially be confused with knotweed. But bamboo has thin, papery, grass-like leaves and hard, woody canes. And broadleaf dock can also potentially look similar, but has larger, broad, oval, wavy edged leaves, ridged stems, and dock has towering central flowering stalks, which can reach 5 feet tall. And also potentially vineweed could be confused, but that's much, much smaller than knotweed, and the stems are vine-like, trying to climb objects. Yeah, I've got had a lot of bindweed. It's quite a common garden weed, but that's much smaller, much smaller. The stems are only a couple of millimetres thick, very thin, like sort of vines. And stems are solid and not hollow, and the leaves are heart-shaped. Don't panic if you find Japanese knotweed, but you do have to get it controlled because it can cause a problem. Okay, so the next plant I have on the invasive list is Himalayan balsam. Now, Himalayan balsam was introduced to the UK in 1839. It's an invasive weed of riverbanks. It was introduced as a garden plant, but it escaped. It spreads quickly and it's fast growing. It has explosive seed pods, which aid its spread by sending seeds into the river, causing further dispersal downstream. Flowers July to October. It has large pink flowers that are shaped like a bonnet, followed by hanging green seed pods. It's native to the Himalayas, hence its name, and it's an annual. And it tends to grow on land near canal banks. It has two oval-shaped petals. It has lance-shaped leaves with red veins and serrated edges. It has hollow and hairless stems, which are yellow to green tinged with red. And it completes its life cycle 1 year and then dies in the autumn. Its growth disappears in winter, leaving bare soil vulnerable to high rainfall events. Sorry, I was probably a bit misleading earlier on when I was talking about Japanese knotweed. I got a bit confused. I don't think Japanese knotweed does that because it still stands the main issue with Japanese knotweed is that it can prevent other native vegetation from growing. I don't think it causes such a problem with soil erosion. I could be wrong. But yeah, the Himalayan balsam definitely causes a problem with soil erosion and the risk of flooding because it completely dies back. The flowers, the foliage and the seeds are edible, so they're not dangerous. So it's not a toxic plant. It's the issue with Himalayan balsam. Is that it's really the issue around biodiversity. The Japanese knotweed is worse. The Japanese knotweed out for two of them is probably worse as it's a perennial and the roots are extremely vigorous and wide-spreading. Okay, the next one on my list is Rhododendron ponticum. Now this is an invasive species of rhododendron and it blooms in the spring. It's a native of the Mediterranean and Asia and it was introduced in the 19th century. It's the only species of rhododendron that's invasive. By the way, there are hundreds of different species of rhododendron and this is the only one that's actually a problem, is specifically Rhododendron ponticum. It's a host to a fungus species that can cause sudden oak death and can affect our other native trees as well. At present, it's not illegal to buy or sell it or plant it in the garden. It's not vigorous or invasive in its natural habitat, but it was crossbred with frost-hardy rhododendron species. It was crossbred with a frost-hardy rhododendron species, and that has produced hybrid vigour. And it can form a closed canopy that shuts out light. But despite being one of the country's most destructive invasive plants, you can still find it for sale in many garden centres. It's an evergreen bush that's native to Spain, Portugal, as I said, and parts of Asia. It was planted in the UK in country estates, and the conditions in the UK are ideal for it to thrive because it needs a lot of rainfall and wet soil. Breeders made it frost hardy. And in places where rhododendrons dominate the nectar supply, such as in Turkey and the Himalayas, bees can produce something called mad honey. And in large doses, this is toxic to humans. It can cause dizziness, blurred vision. The flower's nectar contains toxins, but in the UK, the plants produce lower levels of the toxin and in the native habitat. This plant kills almost every single plant it shares space with, so it's very destructive. It has bold purple flowers. It has a thick canopy of evergreen leaves that easily covers anything next to it. And the temperate rainforests in the west of Scotland have been heavily affected. These woodlands that are filled with birch, hazel, oak and pine and ash capture carbon, but they're now being smothered by Rhododendron ponticum. It naturally occurs along the south and east coast of the Black Sea, including the Pontus region, hence its name, and as I said, also in southern Spain. Okay, I'm going to move over to video number 2 now to carry on my list of invasive plants, and I'm also going to talk a bit about some very poisonous plants as well, but if there's not time, I'll have to carry on in another video. But moving over to video number 2 now.